Hi. Quite a common chord sequence at the end of a piece of music is a thing called the perfect cadence. Perfect cadence is where we go from the 5 chord up to the 1 chord. So if we think about being in a major key, it would sound like this. We'll go from a 5 chord, here kiss the dominant 7th, up to the 1 chord, the major chord. And that works really well to finish a piece of music off because that chord is quite unresolved. And that chord is very resolved. It's the tonic chord. So that finishes a piece of music off quite nicely. If you look at the chords in a major scale, major key, you've got the dominant 7th chord on the 5th degree. If we look at the chords in a natural minor, the 5 chord isn't a dominant 7th, it's a minor 7th. So if we try the same thing in a natural minor key, going from a 5 chord to a 1 chord, it doesn't sound as closing. It doesn't push the piece of music on to closure the same way that it does in the major scale. So if you compare the major sound to the same thing played in the parallel natural minor, yeah, you're going up the root note of the chord going up an interval of a perfect fourth, which is quite a nice way to go. But you haven't got such an unresolved sound on that minor 7th chord, kind of compelling the piece to go forward. So what we could do is we say, well, we're playing in a minor key. Why don't we substitute in a dominant 7th chord on the 5th degree, and that will give us something that sounds like this. That sounds a bit more closing because you've got the unresolved nature of the dominant 7th chord and then the tonic chord there with the minor sound to it. And the reason we can't do that automatically in a minor key is because by introducing that major 3rd degree on the 5 chord rather than the minor 3rd on the 5 chord, we've introduced a note that doesn't belong to the key. As an example, let's have a look at something in the key of A natural minor. So as you can see, that G sharp doesn't belong to the key of A natural minor, so it's an outside note. What we could do though, so we could say, well, actually we want a scale that's got a G sharp in it. We want those notes, but instead of a G natural, we want a G sharp. Well, we can do that. So let's have a look at the notes of the A natural minor, and then we'll change them, and we'll have a G sharp in there. Okay, you probably noticed on the screenshot of PhatPhish there that there is a scale with that name already. It's called the Harmonic Minor. So let's hear how that sounds. Playing in the key of A, it starts off sounding very much like the natural minor scale that we know, because we've got the 1, the 2, the flat 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the flat 6th, but instead of a minor 7th, we've got a major 7th. So it sounds like this. So we've only changed one note there, but it's got a much different sound to the natural minor. It's variously described as having quite a Gothic sound, or a classical sound, or an Eastern sound, or an Egyptian sound. I've heard it described as. However you choose to describe it, it has got a very distinctive sound compared to the natural minor. So we've got the A natural minor sounding like this, and the A harmonic minor sounding like this. Okay, so we've got a new scale. Natural thing to do, pardon the pun, when you've got a new scale is to harmonise it out into chords and see what we've got. If you haven't done, if you're not so familiar with the chord theory, as you'd like to be, there's some other tutorials on here. We'll talk about chord construction, so have a look in the information section down there on YouTube, and I've got some links in there to some other tutorials that might help you. Okay, so let's take a look at the harmonic minor scale harmonized out in triads. So what you should see in there is a chord type that we haven't come across before. some of the chord types we've seen before, like minor triad, major triad, and the diminished triad. But on the third degree, you should notice there's a C plus. Now that plus sign means augmented, and an augmented chord is one that's got a major third and a sharp fifth degree. If you take a major interval of a perfect interval and you make it a semitone larger, it becomes called an augmented interval. And that's what we've done. There's an interval of a perfect fifth between the root and the fifth degree of a major chord normally, but if we increase that interval by a semitone to give us a sharp 5 degree, we've got what's called an augmented fifth between the root and the fifth degree, and that gives us the name of the chord. So now let's take the basic triads that we looked at before and add an extra note. Let's add a 7th degree to get some 7th chords. Now there's quite a few differences here to what we had in the natural minor. First off, obviously the first chord of the natural minor would be a minor 7th. In the harmonic minor we haven't got that flat 7th degree, we've got a natural 7th, so we come up with a chord that you might not have seen before. This one's called the minor major 7th. And it's basically what the name says, it's a minor triad with a natural or a major 7th degree on top of it. Next down, the 2nd degree, we'll have a half diminished chord, similar to what we found in the natural minor. It's a new type of chord on the 3rd degree, that's a C augmented 7th. That basically is a major 7th chord, but the 5th degree is sharpened because we're building it on top of an augmented triad. 4th chord, D minor 7. Same as for the natural minor, and the 5th chord is a dominant 7th, of course, which is where we where we came in on this discussion. Taking the flat 7th degree of the natural minor, raising it up to a 7th degree. So rather than having a minor triad on the 5th degree, we've got a major, and we extend that, we get a dominant 7th chord. Flat 6th chord is a major 7th, and the last chord is built on the diminished triad, same way that the 2nd chord was, but the important thing to notice is that the 7 is not a flat 7, it's a double flat 7. This chord is a fully diminished chord, so what we've got on the 2nd degree with the formula 1, flat 3, flat 5, flat 7, that's called a half diminished chord. What we've got on the 7th degree here with the formula 1, flat 3, flat 5, double flat 7, that's a diminished chord. Be careful not to confuse the two. You notice there's a different symbol used. When we go to a half diminished chord, we put a line through that circle to indicate it's half diminished, whereas on the fully diminished chord we just keep the little circle there, the diminished sign, to show that it's a diminished chord rather than half diminished. Okay, so those are the 7th chords. Now what I wanted to do in this tutorial was just give you an introduction to the harmonic minor scale. Depending on the type of music you listen to, it might be very new to you, or it might be something that you've heard before, maybe not realised it was the harmonic minor that you were listening to. A lot of the real shreddy guitarists like Malmsteen and so on use the harmonic minor a lot. Crops up a lot, the stuff that Richie Blackmore was doing with Rainbow. Anything really where you want a slightly more gothic neoclassical sort of sound, the harmonic minor is a useful scale to use. But as I said in the introduction, I've heard it described as having quite an Eastern sort of sound, or an Egyptian sort of sound. So you can use it in all sorts of different styles of music. So get familiar with the scale and its harmony, the chords involved with it, and how they sound, how they work together. And then experiment, use it in your practice routine, get familiar with the scale, and see how you can incorporate it into your own music. Thing to mention is, because it's got that major 7th in, you might find when you're soloing in a minor key, normally you'll be using a minor pentatonic. If you have something where the underlying chord progression is very strongly emphasising the harmonic minor sort of sound of the piece, then the flat 5 in the minor pentatonic versus the natural 7th in the harmonic minor, they mightn't play too nicely together. So be careful about if your fallback position is, if it gets to go back to the old familiar minor pentatonic, that might not work quite so well when you're playing in a harmonic minor. But again, experiment and let your ears guide you. Okay, so there's quite a lot of material there, so feel free to rewind this and so on to review it as much as you need. So it's a useful scale to know, so have it in your vocabulary and use PhatPhish to help you with finding the fingerings for the scale and for the various arpeggios on the guitar neck. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video sometime soon. Bye for now.